Begin the Gemara today on Daf Lamed Hey Amid Beis. A couple of lines from the bottom where it says Nitla Pitmase. It said in the Mishnah an esrig that the pitim was taken off is possible. Tana Rab Yitzchak ben Elazar. What does Nitla Pitmase mean? Nitla Buchnase. The buchna was taken off. So Rashi explains the pitim on top of the esrig has the shape of a buchna, which is a pestle. So that's what it means. There's another pshat though that Rashi brings and other Rishonim say as well, that nitla buchnasai actually refers to the ukitz. If the ukitz fell out, but part of the ukitz is still there, and you don't have like a groove inside the esrig, it's going to be kosher. But if the ukitz falls out completely, and there's a groove left in the bottom there in the esrig, then it's going to be pasul, and that's what's called buchnasai. It has this round groove inside, similar to a pestle. Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch paskins like both of these opinions. If the pitim falls off, it's pasul. And the ukitz, if it falls off, only if it leaves this groove inside, then it's going to be pasul. Then it said in the Mishnah, Niklaf, if the esrig was peeled, it's going to be pasul. Omar Rava said, Hay esrige, an esrig, the aglid that was peeled, kahines sumke, and now it has the color like a red date. So it changes colors when that outer peel goes off. Like we see a lot of times with an esrig, when you use it a lot, when you hold it in your hands, in that area it becomes a little bit reddish, brownish because of the outer peel that falls off. Ksheida, the esrig is kosher. Frek the Gemara, but didn't we learn in the Mishnah, Niklaf pasul, that an esrig that was peeled is pasul. So the Gemara answers like kasha. It's not a question. It depends how much of the esrig was peeled. Ha bekula, and ha b'miktsasa. Here, so Rashi's pshat is, here we're talking about when the entire esrig was peeled, then it's going to be kosher. And if miktsasa, if only part of it was peeled, then it's going to be pasul. So Rashi explains that if all of it was peeled, so then it all has the same color. But if only part of it was peeled, so then only part of it has a different color, so that's called menumer. It's speckled with a different color and it's going to be pasul. However, as Taisus here brings, Rabbeinu Chananel learned the Gemara the exact opposite. That if the entire esrig was peeled, then it's going to be pasul. If only part of it was peeled, then it's going to be kosher. And Taisus explains, the Gemara later is going to compare this to a case of treifa. When it's fully peeled, there's something missing here in the esrig, it's going to spoil, it's not good, and therefore it's pasul. But if only part of it is peeled, so it can still be a fresh esrig, and therefore it's kosher. However, the Alter Rebbe actually in Shulchan Aruch brings both opinions, but the Alter Rebbe says that if all the esrig is peeled, it's going to be pasul, because the esrig is going to spoil. If part of the esrig was peeled, it's going to be kosher, however, only if it didn't change colors. But if it changed colors in those areas, then like Rashi says, it's speckled and it's going to be pasul. Zog the Gemara, it said further in the Mishnah, Nisdak, Nikev, if the esrig got a split, or it had a hole in it, and we're speaking about a split or a hole in a way that nothing of the body of the esrig is missing. Tani Ula bar Chanina or Ula bar Chinina. So he said, Nikiv, Nekev mefulish b'mashu. If there's a hole in the esrig and it's piercing through and through to the other side, so then it's going to be pasul even if there's nothing missing. V'she'ena mefulish b'ke'iser, and even if it does not have, it's not going through and through, but the hole is as large as the coin of an iser, and even if there's nothing missing of it, it's also going to be pasul. So the point over here, as Rashi explains, is that when the Mishnah said nistak and nikev or nikiv, that it's going to be kosher, that's only because it's not the size, a hole as big as an iser, and it's also not a hole that goes through and through. There's a machlekes rishonim here regarding a hole of an esrig that does not go through and through the esrig, but it's a hole that pierces all the way to the place where the seeds of the esrig are. So Taisus over here says that in such a case it would be pasul as well. The Rosh, however, brings another opinion that even if the hole goes all the way to the place where the seeds are, it's still going to be kosher. Alter Rebbe brings both opinions in Shulchan Aruch and says you should be machmer in such a case not to use the esrig. Rav asked the question, Neildu be'esrig simone treifa. If in esrig you have the same signs that there is in an animal that make it a treifa, when an animal has a defect that it can't live for more than 12 months, so if you have a similar defect in an esrig, mahu, what's going to be the halacha? So now the Gemara is going to clarify immediately what kind of defect are we talking about. What was the question here? If the question was regarding a case where the esrig was peeled, tanina. So that we just spoke about. That was learned in the Mishnah. Esrig that's peeled, so according to Rashi's pshat, if partially peeled, it's pasul. If it's fully peeled, it's kosher. Nizdak, are you speaking about a crack that it was a split, that is. So Tanina, That's something that we also learned over here in the Mishnah. I Nikiv, are you speaking about that there's a hole? So what's all of these things are treifus by animal as well. So Tanina. So we also learned over here what the halacha is regarding a hole. So what was the question of Rava? So the Gemara explains, Ki kami bayale. What was Rava's question? Kidu ule Amar Rabbi Yechanan. His question was like what Umar all said in the name of Rabbi Yechanan regarding the following halacha of treifa. Reye, a lung of the animal. Shenishbecha kekitain. The lung is inside, is completely decayed, and you can spill it. It's like liquefied inside. That the whole flesh, the whole tissue inside of this reye, you can spill it out like liquid. But nevertheless, it's still going to be ksheda. It's going to still be kosher. The animal could still survive. It's still kosher. Now, what's the reason? Why is it still kosher? Isn't this a defect that the animal can't live? So it was explained over there. Over there, the case is because there are these tubes that the animal breathes from and it goes into the lungs, and there are these tubes that enter into the lungs, and those tubes are all still intact. And that's why the animal could still live. It could heal itself, and even though inside it was decayed, but if the tubes are still all good, so then the animal would heal and it could live. But if those tubes are not in good shape anymore, treifa. So then the animal is treifa. So now the question is, if you have a similar situation here with an esrig, what's going to be the halacha? Hacha mai over here, what's the halacha? In other words, we're talking over here about an esrig, that if you look at it at the outside, you see a nice, beautiful esrig. There's nothing wrong, but inside it's decayed. It's spoiled on the inside. So the question is this an esrig that is good? It's still going to, fresh esrig, it's still going to be a good esrig or not? What's the reason to compare or differentiate? So the Gemara explains, Dilma, maybe, there by the animal, so there's no ear that gets to that area of the decay in the lungs that's going to be a problem, so therefore, the body. So the animal, as long as the tubes are still healthy, so the animal will heal itself. So the fact that you see now after you shechted it that it was totally liquefied inside is not an issue. Avohacha, the shalat be'avire, but over here that the esrog is exposed to the ear, and therefore sruchi misrachas. Eventually it's going to spoil. The fact that inside it's totally spoiled, it's going to spoil much quicker, and therefore it's not a good esrog. Dilma, or perhaps loishna, perhaps we don't make a difference, and just like there, the lungs and the tubes on the outside are still in good shape, the esrog over here on the outside is still in good shape, even if inside where the seeds are, it's totally spoiled, it doesn't matter, it still would be kosher. Toshema, the Gemara tries to bring a raya from a braisa. It says in the braisa, esrig, which is tofuach and saruach, which the Gemara will soon focus on these two words to bring a raya to our case. So let's wait for a moment. Kovush, esrig that's pickled, shalok, esrig that was cooked, kushi, a black esrig, lovon, a whitish esrig, umenumer, a speckled esrig, puzzle. These are all puzzle. Esrig, kador, esrig that's round like a ball. Maybe sometimes it could look like a lemon, even like a round esrig. Puzzle is also puzzle. Doesn't have the shape of an esrig. An esrig has to have the tzur of an esrig. The Yeshaimrim, others say afatiyum, a esrig that grew like two esrogim, like twins together, is also puzzle. Esrig abaiser, an esrig that's unripe. Rabbi Kiva paisel. Rabbi Kiva says it's puzzle. Chachamim machshirin. Chachamim say it's considered to be a fruit even if it's unripe and it's kosher. Gidloi bitfos, if you put the esrig when it grows into a mold and it grows in a very strange shape, and you made it to grow like in a different creature that's not the way an esrig usually grows, puzzle, it's also puzzle. Katani miyas. Now the Gemara goes back to the beginning of the brayso. What do we see here? What did it say? Tofuach and seruach. Those two esrogim of tofuach and seruach are puzzle. So what do they mean? My love, don't you think? The pshat is as follows. Tofuach means mibachutz. Tofuach means an esrog that's spoiled from the outside. The translation of tofuach is swelled. Let's say from the outside it was in water or it rained on it and it got swelled and it got spoiled from the outside. What does saruach mean? Saruach means that it's spoiled mibifnim, that it's spoiled on the inside. If you open it up inside, it's going to smell. But on the outside, it looks beautiful. So what do we see here? That even an esrog that's spoiled on the outside, spoiled only on the inside, it's going to be puzzle. So therefore we don't compare it to the case of the lungs that are liquefied on the inside, but it has all the tubes on the outside, that there we say that it's still mutter, it's not a treifa. So the Gemara says, no, that's not necessarily the pshat. Loi, idi ve'idi mi bachutz. Both tafuach and saruach are speaking about an esrig that's spoiled in the outside. But what's the difference between them? V'lo kasha. Even on the outside, there are two ways that it could get spoiled. The tafach in one case is where the esrig swelled because of rain, that it rained in it or anything like that. Afagav d'lo sarach, even if it doesn't smell, it's not spoiled in that way. And the sarach, afagav d'lo tafach. Then you have esrig that the smells, it's not fresh anymore, but even though it didn't swell, it wasn't exposed to liquid or things like that. So those are two different scenarios of the esrig being spoiled on the outside, and they're both going to be puzzle. But if the esrig is good on the inside, good on the outside it is, but on the inside, in the chadrei azera, the place where the seeds are, it's not fresh, over there it would still be kosher. One of the things that said in the Braisa here was, esrig kushi, a black esrig is puzzle. Frekte Gemara but vatanya, in a Braisa we learned, kushi, kosher. A black esrig is going to be kosher. In other words, an esrig that grows in an area, that's how the esrigim grow. Their color, their natural color is black, so then it's kosher. Daimel kushi, so as Rashi explains, but an esrig that grows in our countries where the color of an esrig is not black, it's light green or yellow, and here it grows black, then puzzle. That's going to be puzzle. So how does it say before that kushi is puzzle? If we see that a black esrig that grows in a place that it always grows black is kosher. My answer is Amabaye kitnan nami masnisen doime lekushitnan. When it says in the Mishnah that a black esrig is puzzle, it means an esrig that grows in a country that it usually grows in a regular color of an esrig, and it grew black, then it's going to be puzzle. So again, the point there is an esrig that grows in a place that it always grows that color black, it's going to be kosher. And another country that it always grows in the regular color of esrig, then it's not going to be. Then it's going to be puzzle. Rav gives a different answer. Loi kashya. There's no contradiction between the two braises. Halon v'alahu. It makes a difference if it's in Bavel or in Eretz Yisrael. In Bavel, where it's near areas that esrogim grow in that way, black, so therefore we're accustomed to this color esrogim, so therefore that's considered to be the normal color of an esrog and it's kosher. In Eretz Yisrael, we're near Eretz Yisrael, there's no such countries where it grows black, so if you bring there an esrog that grows black, so for sure it's going to be puzzle. That's Rav's teretz. But the second answer also agrees to the point of the first answer, that if it's growing in a country that it's always growing black there, for sure over there it's going to be kosher. That's not the issue. The only issue is if it's growing in a place where it's not usual for it to grow black. But even there, it matters if it's near a place and they're accustomed to this color or not. Alter Rebbe actually brings this in Shulchan Aruch as well, regarding a black esrog, that it depends from where it comes from. So we said before in the Braisa, esreg haboiser, esreg that's unripe. Rabbi Kiva paiso, Rabbi Kiva says it's possible. V'chachamim machshirin, chachamim say it's kosher. Rabbi. So Rabbi says, now Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Shimon omru dover echad. Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Shimon said the same point. What is that? Rabbi Kiva hadamaran. Rabbi Kiva here that's saying that an unripe esreg is not a fruit and therefore it can't be used as an esreg. And Rab Shimon, where do we see Rab Shimon also says the unripe fruit is not a fruit? The Tanya or the Girsi is the Tanam. We learned in the Mishnah, Rab Shimon paiteres esregim bekaitnan, an esreg that's very small, unripe. There's no halacha of maisus that applied to it yet. It's not a fruit yet. So we see Rab Shimon agrees to Rab Akiva. If it's not ripe, it's not a fruit. Amalei Abaye. So Abaye questions Rabbi, maybe there's no comparison to what Rab Akiva said and what Rab Shimon said. Why did Rabbi Kiva here say an unripe esrog is puzzle? Because here the point is, it is a fruit, but it's not a beautiful fruit. And the requirement of the esrog is that it should be hadar. Maybe over there Rabbi Kiva would agree to the Rabbanim that it's a fruit, and it's chayv and maisris. Hinami, or I could say a svar in the opposite way. Only the reason why Rab Shimon said only there, that it's going to be potter from maisres, because the chsiv aser to aser is called tfuah zaracha. You should give maiser from the produce that grows that you planted, which means kederech shebnei adam mitziin l'zriya. The produce, the way people use it when it comes out, when it grows. And what is that? When it's fully ripe. So therefore, meiser has a specific condition that it has to be ripe to be chayav and meisres. Maybe here, Rab Shimon agrees to the Rabbanon that even a small esrog that's not ripe yet is still hadar, it can still be used for the mitzvah. So there's no comparison between these two machlokesen of Rabbi Akiva, the two opinions of Rabbi Akiva and Rab Shimon. And the Gemara concludes, V'su loy midi. There's nothing else to be said about this. This is the conclusion that the opinion of Rabbi Akiva and the opinion of Rab Shimon are not related one to another. The next thing it said in the Braisa was Gidloi b'tfus. if you grew it in a mold, and you made the shape of the esrog like another creature, pasul. It'll be pasul. Rav explains, so that's only if it grew in a mold and like a different creature. If you create a mold of an esrog and it grows like an esrog, kosher, then it'll be kosher. Fragt the Gemara, Pshita, isn't this obvious? That's what it said in the Braisa, Kimin, Beria, Cheres, Tanya. In the Braisa it said, only if you make a mold like a different creature. So the Gemara answers, Leitzriche, Davide, Dafi, Dafi. He made it a mold that creates the shape of an esrog like these pieces of wood. So just like an esrog is not just a smooth outside, like an apple or an orange, but the esrog is made with blitis, right? That has all these, goes in and out and so on. So over here, when he made the shape in such a way that it creates these like lines of like, looks like pieces of wood that are one near each other. So you may have thought that that's not the natural look of an esrog. So that's why Rava was saying that it is considered to be the beria of an esrog and it's not beria cheres. Itmer, we learned. Esrog shenekvu achbarim. An esrog that it was pierced through an achbar, a rat or a mouse that bit from it. Amarav, so Rav said, Ein za hadar. This is not a good esrog, and the issue is that it's not hadar, it's not a beautiful esrog, so it can't be used. Fragt the Gemara, how could Rav say this? But Eini, is this so? V'har Rab Chanina actually matbul ba. He would dip his esrog. In other words, he would eat his esrog. Rashi says then everything was with dipping, so it's called matbul. He would eat from his esrog. And then with the rest of the esrog, he would use it for the mitzvah, even though, of course, there's something missing here from the esrog. So Rab Chanina says that could be done. So Rav saying that if an achba bites from an esrog, you can't use it. What's the difference? Now, first the Gemara clarifies Rab Chanina's opinion, and then it concludes with the question on Rav, because really what Rab Chanina says is a huge wonder. Well, Rab Chanina kashi masnisen, but on what Rab Chanina used to do, don't we have a question from our Mishnah? What did it say in our Mishnah? In our Mishnah it said, a esrog that has a hole and it's missing something from the esrog, it's possible. So how could Rabbi Chanina eat something from the esrog and use the rest for the Mishnah, for the mitzvah? So the Gemara explains. What it says in the Mishnah is not a question of Rab Chanina's opinion, because the Mishnah is talking about the first day of Yom Tiv, and there, if it's missing something from the esrog, it's an issue. As Rashi explains, the issue is the Torah says lekachtam. Lekachtam means lekichatam, has to be the full fruit. On the second day of Yom Tiv, that psul of a lekachtam doesn't apply. It's only a mitzvah midrabanan. So this requirement is not here. So therefore, on the second day of Yom Tiv, you can take an esrog even if you ate part of it. So that would answer according to Rab Chanina. But Rav, however, according to Rav, what did Rav say? What's the issue if a achbar bites from the esrog? That it's not hadar. Hadar is a requirement that there's no difference between the first day of Yom Tiv and any other days of Yom Tiv. That's one of the points we had right at the beginning of the Perek when it spoke about our dry lulav, and there the Gemara said the dry lulav is pashut, that we understand that it's possible all of the days of Yom Tiv, because that requirement that it should be hadar applies to all the days of Yom Tiv. So according to Rav Kashya, why does Rav say that there's an issue over here that it's not hadar, if on the other days of the Yom Tiv you see that Rab Chanina went and used it? Amalach Rav, so Rav explains, what I said, and what Rab Chanina did is not exactly the same. Shani achbarim demiisi. It's different if a mouse is the one that bit the esrog, it makes it disgusting. Over here, it's not going to be hadar. In the case of Rab Chanina, when he ate a piece of it on the other days of Yom Tiv, it's not, the only thing that is lacking is the tam, lakach tam. So over there, that requirement doesn't apply to the other days. But if a achbar eats of it, over there, Rav said, even the other days of Yom Tiv, you shouldn't use it. It's not hadar. Ikid Amri, there was another version here of what Rav said. Amar Rav said, Zeh hadar. Even if a achbar bites from the esrog, it's still hadar. And he brought a raya, the Rab Chanina, matbul bavin afikba. Rab Chanina would eat part of the esrog and it would be yaitza with it. Well, Rab Chanina kashi masnisen, but on what Rab Chanina himself did, there's a question from our Mishnah that says that if it has a hole and it's missing part of the esrog, it's pasul. And the answer is, as we said, lekashia can be Yom Tov Rishon, on the first day of Yom Tov it has to be lekachtam, the full esrog, and can be Yom Tov Sheni. From the second day forward, it does not have to be the full esrog, and therefore you can eat from it and still use it for the mitzvah. Esrog, cotton, v'chulu. Said in the Mishnah, Machlekes, regarding how small the smallest esrog could be. So Meir, I believe it was, says that a size of a egg is a walnut, and Rabbi Yehuda says as small as an egg. Amar from Bar Papa, so Rav from Bar Papa explains. Kemachlekes kan, just like they're arguing here regarding the smallest esrog, kach machlekes bar vonim mikruzalis. so too there's an argument regarding these rounded out stones that were used back in the day to wipe oneself. Over here, when you go to the bathroom on Shabbos, so usually stones are muktzah on Shabbos, but for this purpose, they did not aser muktzah, but it's only if it's really useful for this purpose, which a person has to wipe himself. That's according to Rashi. According to Tosfos, the issue over here is that you're carrying outdoors in an outhouse where it's carrying in a carmelis, it doesn't have the proper mechitzis. So Chacham suspended their gzeira of a carmelis in a case where these avonim or krizalis you're using are actually useful for this purpose. So we have to know exactly what's the size that it's useful for this purpose. The Tanya we learned in the Braisa, B'Shabbos, Gimel, avonim or krizalis, mutalachnis, lebeis hakisei. 3 of these round stones a person is allowed to carry with himself into the beis hakisei. The kama shiur, and what's the size of them? Rab Meir Eimer ke'egos. Rab Meir says the size is like a walnut. But Rab Yehuda Eimer ke'beitza. And Rab Yehuda says that it's like the size of an egg. So this is the same machlokes as we have over here regarding the size of an esrog. It's a pretty interesting connection. The Aruch Laner points out that there doesn't seem to be any connection between these two subjects. Not only that, over here by esrog, seemingly we're discussing what's the smallest, and it's not allowed to be smaller. And over there regarding the beis hakisei, we're discussing about the small size, that it's not allowed to be bigger. That's what it seems like. So it's really 2 opposite things. But he says, Adarabah, you see here from the Gemara that over there as well, the point is that these are the sizes over there also, that it says is the egos and kibetza, that it should not be smaller than that, similar to here. That's the comparison of the Gemara. Sagt the Gemara weiter, O begodel kedeshe yochas. How large could the largest esrog be? So it's a machlokes, if you could hold 2 esrogim in one hand, or even 2 hands to hold 1 esrog. Gemara brings a story, Tanya, Rab Yaisi, Maise, Rab Akiva, Shabala Beis HaKnesses. There was an incident one year with Rab Akiva. He came to Shul, Ve'esroigai al Kseifa. His esrog was so big, he was carrying it on his shoulders. Amalei Rab Yehuda. So Rab Yehuda said to Rab Yaisi, Misham Raya, you're bringing a proof from that incident. Af heim amrulai. The Chachamim then told Rab Akiva, Ein zahada. This is not beautiful to have an esrog that's this size. However, the halacha l'maaseh, as Alter Rebbe also paskins in Shulchan Aruch, is like this hanhaga of Rabbi Akiva. An esrog, there's no share how large it could be. Even like this size, to carry it on your shoulders, is still a kosher esrog. Zog Teilige Mishneh, ein oigdenes ha-lulav, when we come to tie the lulav. So you can't tie the lulav ela b'minai, only with its own species. You have to take, like we do today, for example, from the branch of the lulav itself. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rab Meir says, Afilu b'chod, b'meshicha, you can use any other string to tie the lulav. Amar Rab Meir said, Maise, b'anshi Yerushalayim, there was once with the people of Yerushalayim, shayu oigdim es lulavayim, b'gimayni shel zav. They tied their lulav with golden rings. So you see that you don't have to use the min of the lulav itself. Amrullah, so they said to him, that's no raya from there. They did tie the lulav with its own min. Then on top of that, they placed an additional thing, the golden rings. But it was tied with its own min. Dr. Gemara. So now, first of all, when it said you have to tie the lulav with its own min, what does that include? So I mentioned when I read the Mishnah that it's to take off the leaves from the lulav itself and tie it. But the Rava says, Amar Rava, afile b'siv, afile b'ikra. This fiber that grows around the palm trees, or from the root, or from the root of the palm tree itself, the dikla from the palm tree, that itself could also be used to tie the lulav and to tie the lulav. That's also the min of the lulav. Another point that Rava said, my time that Rabbi Yehuda, what's the reason that Rabbi Yehuda said that it has to be its own min? Because Rabbi Yehuda holds lulav tzarech eged. A lulav must be tied. This requirement of it being tied is not just because of Zek, Kelev, Amveyu, but it's actually part of the mitzvah. We learn it out from Agudas Ezev that it has to be tied in a bundle. So now therefore, if you're going to use a different species to tie it together, have a chamisha mini. So then you have 5 different minim tying it together. Yeah, five, and again, you have an additional 5th min because you have the 4 minim and then this additional min that you're using here. So this is only if lulav tzarech eged, as the Mefarshim explain, that if lulav ain't tzarech eged, so this, whatever you're tying it with, is like a different separate thing of the 4 minim. But if it's a requirement for the mitzvah and you use a different min, so then it combines. It's part of the mitzvah that you have a 5th min here, and therefore it's going to make it possible. Tosfos before actually has a slightly different shot, that if lulav tzarech eged, so then it becomes, it's bal tosef. Now let me start the other way around actually, that if lulav ain't tzarech eged, so the reason why it's not going to be bal tosef is because in order to fulfill a mitzvah, it has to be held in the way it grows. So if you're tying it, and that's not the way it grows, you're not holding it straight up, so therefore it's not added to the mitzvah, it's not baltaisif. But if lulav is tzarech heged, so then even though it's not the way it grows, but that's the way it's supposed to be done. So even if you're not holding it up derech gedilase, but if that's the way it's supposed to be done, it's going to be baltaisif to the mitzvah, and that's why it's an issue. So that's the explanation, the reason of Rabbi Yehuda. But now the Gemara comes back to the first point that Rav said, that when Rabbi Yehuda said that you have to use the min of the lulav, it's not only from the actual lulav itself, but it includes also the fiber or from the roots of the palm tree. So he's going to now come and prove this. From where did I learn this out? The siv ve'ikra, that even the fiber and the roots of the palm tree, the dikla, min the lulavo. It's also the species of the lulav, and you can tie with it. The Tanya, we learned in the Braisa, Basukis Teishvu, when it says in the Torah, Basukis Teishvu, what does this mean? Besukkah shall call davar. You can use for the schach of the sukkah anything. As we learned before, as long as it's something that grows from the ground and it's not makabel tumah, you can cover your sukkah with it. Divrei Rab Meir. Rab Yehuda has an interesting opinion. Ein sukkah neheges ela bedalid minim shebelulav. You could only use for the sukkah that to cover it, the schach, you could only use the dalad minim of the lulav, not anything else. And he brings a kal v'chomer, v'hadin noisen. I have the following kal v'chomer. What is that? Ma lulav she'ein noyeg ba'leilas kibiyamim je'if, when it comes to a lulav. The mitzvah of lulav is only by day and not by night. So ein noyeg ela ba'arbas minim. You have this mitzvah that it's specifically these 4 minim and not anything else. So when it comes to the sukkah shenehages ba'leilas kibiyamim, the mitzvah of sukkah, which is by day and by night, it's more stringent, in other words. Ein edin shleitei ba'arbas minim. So most definitely it should have this limitation that it must be dafke with these 4 minim, like you find by the dalad minim. That's his kal v'chomer. Amrulai. So they responded to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir said to Rabbi Yehuda, no, this kal v'chomer is not acceptable. Why? Kol din shatadon tchilas ilahachmer v'soif ilahakol. Anytime you have a kal v'chomer, that the beginning of your kal v'chomer is going to come out to be a chumrah, as we're learning out over here from lulav, that if lulav requires these dalad minim, so for sure sukkah, which is more stringent, should require these dalad minim. But then v'soif ilahakol, your kal v'chomer in the end is going to lead to a leniency. What's that? The Gemara is going to explain in a moment. Ein edin. This is not an acceptable kal v'chomer. Now, what leniency could this stringency that you could only use the dalad minim lead to? So the Gemara explains simple. Lo motza arbas minim. If a person doesn't have 4 minim for his schach, yeshiv a bottle, so then he should sit and not fulfill the mitzvah. And the Torah says you should sit in the sukkah 7 days. Sukkah shall kol dava, a sukkah of anything. And here this person is going to come out that he's pater from the mitzvah. He doesn't have this schach to use, and therefore you're patering him because he can't do the mitzvah. So it comes out to be a leniency. And the Gemara brings another ayat. In Ezra, when it describes what the Yidden have to do for Sukkot, it says, Tzu, go out to the mountain, ve'aviu alei zayis, bring the branches from a zayis tree, alei eitz, shemen, from different shemen trees, v'alei hodos, v'alei tmorim, v'alei eitz avis, and v'asu sukkos karkosav, and build the sukkos like you're supposed to. So you see clearly in the pasuk that it's saying that they can bring also from other materials that grow, not only from the dalad minim. So how does Rabbi Yehuda respond to this? So regarding the raya from Ezra, the Gemara explains, Rabbi Yehuda savar hanile defanos. Those other minim that are mentioned in the pasuk are going to be used for the walls. Ali hados, vali tmarim, vali eitzavis. So those other minim that are from the dalad minim that are mentioned in the pasuk l'schach. That's going to be used for the schach, like his opinion that only from the dalad minim could you use for the schach. So that's one point we see that Rabbi Yehuda was machadish. You must use the dalad minim for the schach. Now there's another Mishnah where we see Rabbi Yehuda speaking about schach. Utanan, we learned in another Mishnah. Misachichin b'nisorin divrei Rabbi Yehuda. You can use planks of wood for the schach. That's what Rabbi Yehuda says. No, so what does it say over here? It says that you can use planks. Now obviously, planks do not come from the actual leaves of the lulav. They're not going to be as big as planks. And he says that could be used for schach. So alma, siv, ikr. So the planks over here that Rabbi Yehuda speaks about must be coming from the min of the dalad minim themselves. There's no other min that's kosher according to Rabbi Yehuda. So alma, siv, ikr, dedikla. So we must say that this is the fiber or from the roots of the palm tree. Min de lulavahu. This is also the min of the lulav, and that's what Rabbi Yehuda was saying, that if you use nisarim made also from the min of the lulav tree, it's going to be kosher. So this is where Rava took this point from, that the sieve and the ikra of the dikla of the palm tree could also be used to tie the lulav and the hadassim and the aravas together, because it's considered to be from the min of the lulav. Shma mina, this is a raya to what Rava said.